I never thought I'd find myself in this kind of mess, but here I am, trying to make sense of a situation that's turned my world upside down. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife Jennifer for over 10 years. We met in college, got married young, and for the most part I thought we had a good thing going. Sure, we had our fights like every couple does, but nothing that suggested she was hiding something big. Or so I thought. At first, it was small things that started to bother me. She'd be late coming home from work more often than usual, claiming she was stuck in meetings or caught up in a project. I'd ask her about it, but she'd brush me off with her usual bitchy attitude, saying I was just paranoid or jealous. Honestly, I wanted to believe her. Maybe she was just busy, maybe I was overthinking it. But then little things started to add up. She'd get phone calls and texts late at night. Once or twice I saw the screen light up with a name I didn't recognize. She'd quickly shove it away, acting like I was imagining things. I didn't press her, figuring maybe I was being paranoid again. But the feeling that something was off kept nagging at me. She'd snap at me more often, shut me out emotionally, and her whole attitude towards me shifted. It was like she was hiding something. And maybe I was just being insecure, but I had this gut feeling that I wasn't getting the full truth. One particular night, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know it's not exactly noble, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I found a text thread with a guy named Brian. The messages weren't explicit at first, mostly just flirty jokes, teasing, and banter. But what caught my eye was a message from her saying, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Make sure you're ready for some fun." That was weird because she had told me she was going out with her friend Lisa that night. I felt a punch of anger and confusion. Was she lying about where she was? I kept reading. The messages got more suggestive. They planned to meet up and she told him she'd be thinking about him all day. I was stunned. Who the hell was this guy? How long had this been going on? My mind was racing, but I knew I couldn't confront her then and there. I needed to be sure. The next day I started paying closer attention. Her behavior was different, more distant, more bitchy, snapping at me over small things and always angry when I asked about her whereabouts. Then I found her car parked at Brian's apartment complex one evening when I accidentally left work early. I saw her get out and she looked different, like she was trying to hide something. When she saw me, she froze, then quickly got into her car and sped off. I felt my blood boiling. That was when I knew for sure she was cheating, no doubt about it. I was angry, hurt, and honestly completely lost. How long had this been going on? Was it just last summer? Did she lie about everything else too? My mind kept circling around the thought that she's been lying to me about so much more than just where she was that night. The trust I had built over the years was shattered in seconds. I didn't sleep. That night, the image of her sneaking around, lying to my face, kept replaying over and over. I felt betrayed not just by the cheating but by her entire attitude. This wasn't just a fling, it felt like she'd been lying to me for months. I couldn't believe I married someone so manipulative and dishonest. The worst part is, I still loved her, or at least I wanted to. But now, everything was different. I had to figure out how to deal with this, whether I confront her or walk away. The pain was sharp, but I knew I had to face it. I just didn't know what I'd do next. The morning after I found out about Brian, I was a wreck. I couldn't focus, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to that night at her car, the way she looked scared when she saw me, like she knew she'd been caught. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. How could she do this to me? After all these years, how could she lie so effortlessly? And the worst part, I kept wondering if there were even more lies I didn't know about. Had she been cheating on me all along? Was this just a one-time thing, or was it just the tip of the iceberg? I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it right away. I needed a plan, something cold and calculated. I spent the next few hours quietly gathering evidence. I printed out her texts with Brian, saved her location data, and looked through her emails. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she'd throw at me. I also started thinking about how to approach her without sounding crazy or losing my temper. I had to be smart. When I finally sat her down that evening, her attitude was even more bitchy and dismissive than usual. She looked right at me with that bitchy smirk, like she knew she had the upper hand. I told her I needed to talk, that it was serious. She rolled her eyes, sighing loudly. What now, Mike? Can't a girl have a little fun without you getting all paranoid? I showed her the printed messages from Brian, the times I'd tracked her location, the texts she hadn't deleted. Her face did change much, just that annoyed expression that she always had when I questioned her. She snorted, "You're overreacting. Maybe I was just talking to someone and it didn't mean anything." I couldn't believe how she was justifying it, like she was entitled to cheat or lie as long as she felt like it. I asked her outright if she'd been lying to me about where she was that night and if there were other times she'd been unfaithful. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "Honestly, Mike, you're just insecure. Maybe I get bored or maybe I'm not happy, but that doesn't mean I'm cheating. You're just reading into everything." That was her typical pattern: deny, dismiss, gaslight. I felt a surge of rage mixed with heartbreak. How could she be so callous? How could she lie to my face like that? I wanted to scream, but I kept my voice steady, telling her I knew the truth and that I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine anymore. That's when she snapped, her voice turning bitchy and defensive. "Fine, if you're gonna be like that, maybe I should just leave. You think you're so smart, but you're just insecure. I don't need you breathing down my neck all the time." That's when I realized she wasn't going to stop lying or defending herself. She was too used to getting her way, too manipulative. I felt a cold wave of realization hit. This wasn't just a fling, not anymore. She didn't seem sorry or remorseful. She seemed angry that I'd caught her. Her attitude, her refusal to own up, made me see that I was dealing with someone who's been dishonest for so long she probably believed her own lies. I sat there quietly, trying to process what I'd just heard. I wasn't sure if I was more angry at her or at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept thinking, how long has she been lying? Did I miss the signs? How deep does this betrayal go? It was like my whole world was collapsing. I'd always trusted her, and now I was questioning everything. I didn't know how to feel: hurt, furious, betrayed, or maybe all of it at once. I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I'd have to decide what to do, and fast, because the thought of her lying to me, cheating behind my back, was eating me alive. After that confrontation, I knew I had to take a step back and really think about what this all meant. I couldn't just blow up and yell at her, though part of me wanted to. Instead, I spent the next few days collecting my thoughts, trying to detach from the immediate pain and anger. I kept asking myself questions. How much of her is genuine? How long has she been playing me? Is this just about Brian, or is there more? The suspicion that she'd been lying about everything all along started to gnaw at me worse than the betrayal itself. During those days, I noticed her behavior was even more bitchy and dismissive. She'd ignore me, snap at me over small things, and act like I was the problem. It was clear she was trying to push me away, maybe because she knew I was onto her or because she was feeling guilty. But I wasn't buying that she was just bored or unhappy. This felt like a calculated move. A way to keep me off balance, to make me doubt myself. The more I thought about, the more I became convinced she'd been lying about a lot more than just where she was last summer. One night, I decided to lay everything out, every piece of evidence I had, every suspicion that had been building. I wanted her to hear it all at once, to see how deep I'd gone. I told her I knew about Brian, about her lies, about everything I'd uncovered. Her reaction was typical: defensive, bitchy, dismissive. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're just jealous, you're insecure, and you're imagining things. Maybe you're the one who's been cheating on me with your paranoia." That was the moment I realized she'd spun her web so well that she believed her own lies. She was lying about her feelings, lying about her loyalty, lying about everything. I could see it in her eyes. She thought she was clever, that she could keep up her act forever. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I didn't want to be with someone who lied and cheated, and I was done playing her game. That's when she started to get even more bitchy, saying I was overreacting, that I was being controlling, that I was the one pushing her away. That night I felt something shift inside me. I'd always been the nice guy in this relationship, trying to keep the peace, trying to believe in her good side. But she had shown me a different side, one that was selfish, manipulative, and dishonest. I realized I had been blind for too long, hoping things would get better. But they were. They never were because she was who she was, bitchy, lying, and completely unwilling to accept responsibility. The next day, I started making plans. Not just to confront her again, but to figure out how to get out of this mess. I couldn't live with her knowing she'd betrayed me so deeply. I reached out to a lawyer, started sorting through our finances, and made arrangements for a place to stay if I decided to leave. It was terrifying, but I knew I had to do it. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, because every day that went by, I felt more like a fool, someone who had been played and lied to for years. That evening, I sat her down again, this time to tell her I was done, that I knew she'd been lying. All along that I couldn't trust her anymore. Her bitchy smirk was gone, replaced with a look of annoyance and defiance. She said she didn't care what I thought, that she'd do whatever she wanted, and if I wanted to leave, fine. But she made it clear she wasn't going to go quietly. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be easy, and I'd have to stand my ground. Because at this point, the betrayal cut too deep, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending she was someone I could trust anymore. The following days were a blur of planning, anger, and a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't just walk away without some kind of plan, especially considering how deep her lies went. I kept replaying everything I'd uncovered, trying to figure out the full scope of her betrayal. How many times had she lied? Was there a chance she'd been lying about other things too? I wasn't just angry, I was hurt on a level I'd never experienced before. It felt like my entire perception of my marriage, my life, was shattered into pieces. I started to notice even more red flags. She was more bitchy than ever, making snide comments, dismissing me with that sharp attitude she had perfected. It was like she was trying to push me away, maybe to make me the bad guy, or maybe because she knew I was getting closer to the truth. The thing is, I didn't care about her manipulations anymore. I just wanted out. I couldn't keep living under the constant suspicion and betrayal. I needed to reclaim some sense of control and dignity. One night I caught her trying to sneak out again, this time after I'd already confronted her. She was grabbing her purse quickly, trying to slip out without me noticing. I blocked her path, feeling that familiar surge of anger. "Where do you think you're going?" I asked, voice cold but steady. She rolled her eyes. "It's none of your business, Mike. You're just overreacting again." But I wasn't going to let her dodge this. I told her she wasn't going anywhere until we had a serious talk. That's when she snapped, her voice dripping with contempt. "Whatever, I don't have time for your bullshit. You're just jealous, insecure, and crazy. You always think I'm cheating, but maybe it's you who's got the problem." That was the final straw. Her outright denial, her dismissiveness. It all confirmed she believed her own lies. She'd been lying so long she thought she was untouchable. I realized I couldn't trust a word she said anymore. I knew I had to act fast because her attitude was only getting worse, and I didn't want her to do something destructive or stupid. The next day, I finally decided to tell her I was leaving. I called a lawyer, packed a bag, and arranged a temporary place to stay. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a big showdown, but I also couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I knew I needed to create distance, emotionally and physically, because her presence was poisoning the entire situation. I sat her down again, told her I'd found enough evidence and that I was done. She just sneered at me, saying, "Good. You're just overreacting. You're never going to find anyone better than me anyway." Hearing her say that, I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger because she thought she could manipulate me forever. Relief because I finally saw her for what she was: selfish, dishonest, and unworthy of my trust. I told her I was leaving, that I'd file for divorce, and that I never wanted to see her again. Her reaction was to scream and call me names, but I wasn't listening anymore. I just walked out, feeling the weight of everything I'd been through. That night, I stayed at a friend's place, trying to process what had happened. I kept telling myself that I deserved better, that I shouldn't have let it get this far. But part of me still felt broken. I kept wondering if I missed signs, if I should have seen it coming sooner. But honestly, I didn't want to blame myself. It was her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. I kept thinking about how she'd lied, cheated, and played me for months, maybe longer. As I lay in that unfamiliar bed, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could try to fix things, or I could cut my losses, walk away, and start over. I was exhausted, emotionally raw, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. Not anymore. I had to reclaim my life, my trust, and my dignity one step at a time. And right now, that meant moving on, even if it hurt like hell. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into figuring out what I wanted, whether to fight for the marriage or to finally let go. The betrayal had cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever really trust anyone again, especially someone I once loved so much. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't stay with someone who lied and cheated behind my back, who dismissed my feelings as paranoia or insecurities. That realization brought a strange sense of relief, mixed with the lingering pain of loss. I started the process of divorce, although it wasn't easy. Jennifer, my wife, threw everything she had at me, trying to guilt-trip me and make me doubt my decision. She called me a controlling, jealous asshole, claiming she was just having some fun and that I was overreacting. She even accused me of cheating on her, which was laughable given what I'd uncovered. But her bitchy attitude and her constant blame shifting made it clear she wasn't sorry, and she definitely wasn't going to stop lying. The worst part was how she kept denying everything, acting like she was the victim. She'd call me crazy, say I was paranoid, and accuse me of ruining her life. Honestly, I'd never seen her so manipulative. It was like she thought she could manipulate her way out of everything, like her lies would somehow fix the damage she'd done. But I knew better. I knew her for what she was, a liar, a cheat, a bitch who lied about everything, including where she was, who she was with, and what she truly wanted. During this time, I also started rebuilding my life. I found a new place to stay, got a new job closer to that place, and began talking to friends I'd neglected during the marriage. It was hard, no doubt, especially when I'd lie in bed at night and think about her and those damn texts with Brian. Sometimes I'd wonder if I'd ever really know what was true, or if I'd just been fooling myself for years. The trust was gone, and I knew I'd have to work hard to rebuild it, within myself at least. One evening, I finally confronted her one last time. She showed up at my new apartment, her bitchy smirk back on her face. She said she wanted to talk, but I knew better. I told her I didn't want to hear her lies anymore, that I was done. I told her I'd found out everything she'd hidden and that I was moving on. She scoffed, said I was a coward and that I'd never find anyone better than her. I looked her right in the eyes and said, "You lied, you cheated, and you manipulated me for months. I was blind, but I see it now. I'll be better off without you." Her reaction was a scream, full of venom and anger. She called me every name in the book, told me I'd regret losing her, that she'd move on and find someone who appreciated her. But I didn't care. I knew I was better off without her bullshit. I finally felt like I was reclaiming my life, bit by bit, piece by piece. Now, looking back, I realize what I've learned from all this. Never ignore the red flags, no matter how much you love someone. Trust is everything, but it's also fragile. Once it's broken, it's not easy to fix. And most importantly, you have to value yourself enough to walk away when someone betrays you that badly. I don't regret leaving her, even though it hurts, and I don't regret finally opening my eyes. Sometimes, you have to lose someone to find yourself. And honestly, I think I'm finally starting to do that. It's been a few months since I finally told Jennifer I was done, and honestly, I feel like I'm finally starting to breathe again. The pain still lingers, and I won't pretend I'm completely healed or that I've moved on completely. But I've learned some hard lessons. Mostly, I've learned that trust, real trust, is something you shouldn't give lightly, and once it's broken, it's damn near impossible to rebuild. I also learned that I deserve honesty and respect, not manipulation and lies. Living through this betrayal has changed how I see relationships. I no longer take trust for granted, and I don't ignore the red flags. I've become more cautious, more aware of my worth. I realize that sometimes walking away is the only way to protect yourself from someone who doesn't value you. That's what I had to do, cut out the toxicity, the lies, the manipulations. And while I still get angry sometimes, I remind myself that I'm better off without her. Looking back, I see all the signs I missed or dismissed: her bitchy attitude, the secretive phone calls, the sudden changes in behavior. I see how her lies grew bigger and more elaborate, and I realize I was fooling myself into thinking everything was fine because I wanted it to be. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to face it. Now I see the truth clearly. Some people can't be fixed once they've crossed that line. And I won't be a victim of that kind of betrayal again. I've started rebuilding my life step by step. I've reclaimed my independence, my confidence, and my peace of mind. I no longer look at her social media or wonder what she's doing. I focus on myself, my friends, my future. I've learned that the best revenge is living well, being happy, being honest with myself, and not letting her lies define me. I still get angry when I think about what she did, but I'm learning to let it go. The biggest lesson I want to share is this: never accept lies from someone you love, and never stay in a situation where your trust is shattered, because once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. Protect yourself, value yourself, and never settle for less than honesty. It hurts like hell to lose someone you thought was your everything, but sometimes losing that person is the only way to find yourself again. So here I am, a little wiser, a little stronger, and finally ready to move forward. Maybe someday I'll find someone who truly respects and values me, who's honest and kind, and who doesn't lie about where she was last summer. For now, I'm just glad I finally stood up for myself and refused to be the victim of someone else's lies. That's the best thing I could do for my future.